Hey guys, so in this video I'm going to be covering in-text citations. First, let us take a look at what you should not be doing when you're trying to cite your sources. So we have this original quote here. That's what Pharrell does. He injects that vibrant energy into the music in a way that you can feel. Now, this quote appeared in an article by Timberlake, and it was published in 2014, and it was a magazine, and the page number was page 28. So let us look at these four ways that we typically see students citing that are incorrect. So in the first way, we have no credit and no quotation marks. For example, this person wrote, Pharrell is gifted in the music he produces. He injects that vibrant energy into the music in a way that you can feel. So as you can see, this part here, he injects that vibrant energy, that was taken directly from the original quote, but there are no quotation marks around it, and they do not cite the author. In the second example, we have quotation marks, but no credit is given. So for example, Pharrell is gifted in the music he produces. Quote, he injects that vibrant energy into the music in a way that you can feel. So this part was taken from the original quote, and the person did use quotation marks to indicate it, but they did not cite the author, which is still an example of plagiarism. In the third example, we have credit given but no quotation marks. So for example, Timberlake notes that Pharrell injects that vibrant energy into the music in a way that you can feel. So they did cite the author, however, they never used quotation marks around injects that vibrant energy, etc. So it's still plagiarism. And finally, we have lifting parts of the text without using quotation marks. For example, in examining the way that Pharrell connects to his audience, Timberlake 2014 notes that audiences feel Pharrell's music because he injects vibrant energy into the work that he creates. So this part here, he injects vibrant energy. That is, of course, taken from the original. And they did a pretty good job of paraphrasing some of it and just lifting a part of the quote, which is ideally what you want to do when you're writing. However, they did not use quotation marks around that part where they're using the original language, so it is still plagiarism. So if they had used quotation marks around he injects vibrant energy, then this would have been a great quote because they're citing the source, and they're not quoting the entire sentence. They're integrating the quote into their sentence by paraphrasing some of it. So this would have been a strong quote. So I went over this in a previous lecture video, the two correct ways of quoting, but I'll briefly review it here. So we have two ways. One is when you are mentioning the author in the signal phrase, and the other is when you are not mentioning the author in the signal phrase. And remember, a signal phrase is a short sentence or a short phrase that introduces your quote. So for example, we have here, Roman and Raffleson, 2000, stated, quote, you would be wise to be alert to the power of words, etc. So we have the author's last names stated in the signal phrase, Roman and Raffleson, and then we have the year of publication immediately following the author's last names. After our quote, we are going to cite our page number in our parenthetical citation. So we're going to put lowercase p, period, and our page number in parentheses, and then we put our period after the parenthetical citation, not before it, because this here is still a part of the sentence. If you do not have page numbers, like if it's a website or an online source that does not have stable page numbers, you're going to cite the paragraph number. So you'll say PARA period or PARAS period if it's multiple paragraphs. So in this example, as I said, this is stating the author in the signal phrase. In this example, we did not state the author in the signal phrase. So we said here, when thinking about using politically correct language, quote, you would be wise to be alert, etc. So we did not mention Roman and Raffleson in the signal phrase. Therefore, we're going to mention them in the parenthetical citation at the end of the quote. So in parentheses, we're going to say Roman and Raffleson, comma, 2000, comma, lowercase p, period, 151. Close our parentheses and then put our period after the citation, not before it. And notice when we are mentioning them in the signal phrase, we're going to spell out and, but when we're mentioning them in the parenthetical citation, we're going to use the ampersand, the ampersand. So it's the and sign, the and symbol here. And again, if you are citing a source that doesn't have stable page numbers, we're going to say PARA for paragraph number. So now we're going to talk about how to remove words from a quote. So whenever you are quoting, you don't want to have very long quotes because then you become overly dependent on your quotes. And it makes it seem like it's not really your paper, it's just a paper full of quotes. So you want to try to keep your quotes as short as possible while still making it make sense and still using your quotes to help illustrate and support your points and to add credibility to your paper. So we do need quotes in our papers, but you don't want to have too many. So the key is to find a good balance between using your evidence to support your ideas and not being overly dependent on your quotes. So one way of doing that is to use ellipses to remove words from your quote. And the ellipses are the three dots, as you can see here, with spaces between each dot. So if we have a paragraph, but we only need information from like the beginning of the paragraph and the end of the paragraph from this article, we don't need to cite the entire paragraph. We can use ellipses to remove words that are not needed or remove information that's not needed, so our quote will be a lot more condensed and focused on the point that we're trying to make with that quote. So let's take a look at an example of how this is done. We have in the original quote here, there are some writers who sweep us along so strongly in the current of their energy, Norman Mailer, Tom Wolfe, etc. So they've listed the authors here, that we assume that when they go to work, the words flow. And this was taken from Zinzer, 2006, page 243. Now, let's say we don't want to list out all of these authors here. We just want the information in the beginning of the sentence and information at the end of the sentence. So we can do that by using the ellipses. So this will look like Zinzer 2006 stated, quote, there are some writers who sweep us along so strongly in the current of their energy, ellipses, that we assume that when they go to work, the words flow. So these three dots here are indicating that you have removed words from the original quote. If you just take out those words, then the reader will not know that you're doing that, and you're essentially changing the quote, which is an unethical way of quoting. So if you are removing words, you do need to indicate that you are removing those words with the ellipses. Now, when you read this sentence, you'll see that the idea that's being presented after we have removed words still reflects the idea that was meant by the author of this quote. So when we're removing words, we cannot remove words in a way that changes the author's intention with their quote or changes the meaning behind the quote. It still has to mean the same thing. So we can't remove words to try to manipulate the quote to make it mean what we want it to mean. Also, when you are removing words, your sentence still has to flow grammatically. So if you read this, you will see that it's still a grammatically correct sentence. So we cannot remove something and create an incomplete thought. It still has to be complete and grammatically correct. One way of making it grammatically correct is to insert words into the quote to help the sentence flow. And the way to do that is to use square brackets around any inserted words. So if we take a look at this original quote, we'll see it says, today she sits at the head of the boardroom table at Parkwood Entertainment. This was written by Sandberg, 2014. Now let's say we wanted to insert a word here to explain who she is. We can say Sandberg, 2014 observes, quote, today she, and then in square brackets, Beyonce, sits at the head of the boardroom table at Parkwood Entertainment. So we are using square brackets to insert her name here so we know who the she is referring to. And the sentence is still grammatically correct. It still means the same thing as the original sentence. So we're not inserting words to change or manipulate the quote. We're inserting words for clarification. and it still flows, etc. So you can insert words for clarification or for the grammatical flow of your sentence, or to provide additional information, again, to clarify something, but we should never remove words in a way that it manipulates the quote. And next we have when you're citing a block quote. So let's say you have a quote that you really need to cite all of the information from this piece, like it's a paragraph or a part of a paragraph or something of the sort, but it's longer than 40 words. So what you're going to do is use the block quote format. So basically, you still have your signal phrase, as we can see here, in examining techniques to make your writing more precise. Zinzer 2006 noted. So we have our signal phrase, and then we have our quote. I'm sorry, the formatting got a little messed up because I was putting it together in a PowerPoint, so that's why there's this extra spacing after paper and after anything. But you can ignore that extra spacing. It should just be written as a correct sentence. But anyway, so after our signal phrase, we are going to state our quote, and if it's more than 40 words, we are going to indent the quote. So the entire quote will be indented. And we are not going to use quotation marks because since it's indented, your reader will know that this is a quote, so you don't need to use those quotation marks. And your parenthetical citation goes after the punctuation mark, not before it, and you don't put a period after it. This ended with a question, but if it had ended with a period, your period would go before the parenthetical citation, not after it. And then you just continue your paragraph at the margin. You won't indent the next line as you're continuing that same paragraph. Now, you should not have a lot of block quotes in your paper. Remember, as I said before, you want to have ownership over what you're writing, and you want to have ownership and control over your paper. But if you have a lot of very long quotes in your paper, it's making you seem like a weak writer. So if you do absolutely need to have a quote that's longer than 40 words, this is the correct way to cite it. But again, you want to try to avoid doing that. Instead, what you should do is try to paraphrase more and only quote the important or significant parts of this article that's helping to illustrate the point you're making and support the point that you're making. Also, everything in your paper must be double spaced, including your quotes. So don't add an extra space above or after your block quote. Instead, you're just going to type it like you're typing the rest of your paper, and this will be double spaced, as will everything else in your paper. And finally, we have an indirect source. So let's say you have an article that's quoting someone in the article. So we have an article where the author is Gregory. The article was written and published by Gregory. But Gregory is quoting Richard Sherman in his article, his or her article. So this is the way that you would cite it. You would say, in an interview, Richard Sherman stated, quote, "I'm the best corner in the game," as cited in Gregory 2014, page 50. And then we will put our period there. So Richard Sherman is the one who stated this quote, who stated these words. It came out of Richard Sherman's mouth. But Gregory is the one who wrote the article and who cited Richard Sherman in his article. And that's called an indirect source. So this is the way you would cite that. Now, everything that I just went over can be found on the Purdue OWL website. So we can check under APA Formatting and Style Guide, and we can look under In-Text Citations to Basics, which covers a lot of what I just went over. You can also look under In-Text Citations Authors/Authors, which covers information that I did not go over in this PowerPoint, but is very, very helpful for you. So if you have an article by 3 or more authors, it explains how you should cite that. So we have here the last name of the author, and then et al. Period, which is indicating that we have more authors in this article. If we just use the author's last name, then that's ignoring the other authors who are included, who helped to write this article. And we also have, if we don't know the author, or if it's an organization as an author, if we have a citing indirect sources, author unknown, or the date is unknown, so we have explanations of how to do that. So definitely take some time and review this section if you have questions about how to cite an article, because you have a variation in the number of authors that that help to write the article, or if it's some kind of variation to the standard rule that we reviewed. You can also review the APA sample paper, of course, and that will have a lot of examples that illustrate everything that I just showed you. So when we click on the sample student paper, if you look through, you will see that they are removing words from the quote, they're inserting things. They also have an example of the block quote format, which I will show you in 1 second. Like here, right here. So we have our signal phrase, and then our block quote, and um, then they continue their paragraph, etc. So definitely review this sample paper and look through it to find examples of everything that you need to know related to citing your sources in text.